slept next to 20 red panda cubs for 20 nights. Then one of them did this with its paw. The field was already dark when I arrived. Not the kind of dark softened by streetlights or distant windows, but a deeper darkness, wide and patient, stretching in every direction. The dirt road disappeared behind me as soon as I turned off the engine. Silence followed, thick and unfamiliar, broken only by the wind bending the tall grass, and a faint hum of insects waking up for the night. The shelter stood alone in the middle of it all. A low wooden structure, old, temporary, breathing with the wind. Inside, the air smelled of damp earth, leaves, and something warmer. Alive. A single bulb flickered above, casting long, uneven shadows across the floor. That was when I saw them. 20 red panda cubs. Small, fragile, curled into themselves like they were trying to take up less space in the world. Some slept in loose piles, tiny chests rising and falling. Others were awake, watching me, dark eyes that didn't blink. They didn't move closer. They didn't run away either. They were waiting. I set my bag down slowly, careful not to make sudden sounds. Every step made the wooden floor creak, and with each creak, a few ears twitched. One cub let out a soft sound, not quite a cry, not quite a warning. The others shifted, bodies pressing together. I had been told to sleep here, not near them. With them, I spread my blanket on the floor, right at the edge of their space, close enough that they could hear my breathing, close enough that they would know someone was there. When the night grew too quiet, when I finally lay down, the cold of the floor seeped into my back. The bulb buzzed overhead. Outside, the wind picked up, brushing the walls like curious fingers. No one slept. The cubs stayed awake longer than I expected. Every small movement I made, adjusting the blanket, turning my head, was met with alert eyes. Trust, I realized, was not something they were ready to give. And if I was honest, neither was I. I stared at the ceiling, counting breaths that weren't mine, thinking about how strange it was to feel less alone, in a place so isolated, thinking about how silence can be louder than noise. Sometime after midnight, one of the cubs shifted closer to the edge of the group, just a few inches, not enough to touch me, just enough to close the distance. I didn't move. The wind calmed. The insects softened their song. And for the first time that night, a few of the cubs finally slept. I stayed awake because I had the sudden, heavy feeling that these nights, all 20 of them, were going to change something in me. And I didn't yet know if I was ready for that. The second night felt colder, even though the air hadn't changed. The sky was low and gray when the sun disappeared, as if the field itself was holding its breath. A thin fog rolled in from somewhere unseen, settling over the grass, and clinging to the wooden walls of the shelter. By the time I stepped inside, my clothes carried the smell of dampy, earth, the cubs not, iced. They always did. Their eyes followed me in quiet unison as I moved across the floor. Not afraid, at least not entirely, but cautious in a way that felt older than them, like they had already learned that stillness could be safer than curiosity. I laid my blanket in the same place as the NI, GHD before. That mattered. Animals notice patterns. They notice when things stay where they should. When I lay down, I didn't look at them. I didn't reach out. I simply breathed, slow, steady, letting the rhythm of my chest be calm. Part of the room. Minutes passed, then more. The fog pressed against the small windows, turning the bulb's weak light into a soft blur. Somewhere outside, something moved through the grass. One of the cubs flinched. Another let out a short, sharp sound. I felt it in my chest. Before I heard it, Fear-S pre-ads fast in silence. Without thinking, I shifted slightly closer. Not toward any one cub, just closer to them as a group. My movement was slow enough. The floor be A rally creaked. No one ran. That was new. The cubs huddled tighter. Tiny bodies forming. A single breathing shape. I could hear them now. Soft sniffs. Uneven breaths. The faintest sounds. Of comfort being learned. In real time, sleep came in pieces. Every time I drifted off, a sound pulled me back. Wind. Wood. A dream I didn't finish. And yet, between those fragments, something unfamiliar settled in. A sense of being needed. Near dawn, when the sky outside us shifted from black to deep blue, I felt it. Light. Hesitant. Most imaginary. A weight against my sleeve. I didn't look. I didn't move. I let the moment exist, exactly as it was. When the first thin line of morning light slipped through the cracks in the wall, the cub had already pulled back. The group was still asleep, tangled together, peaceful in a way they hadn't been. And the night before, my arm was numb, my body stiff, but my chest felt lighter. That was when I understood. So, meeting important. Trust wasn't built in big moments. It was built in the quiet ones, when nothing bad happened, and somewhere deep inside, a part of me that had been bracing for years finally loosened its grip. By the third night, the field no longer felt completely unfamiliar. The wind still moved the grass in long, whispering waves, but my body had started to recognize the sounds. The shelter creaked, the same way, in the same places. The bulb flicker, at the same intervals. Patterns were forming, quiet, dependable. The cubs noticed too. They were waiting. When I arrived, not all of them, but a few, sitting up, watching the door. Their small faces caught the light, just enough for me to see their eyes. Follow every step I took. Curiosity hadn't replaced fear yet, but as standing closer now, I set my bag down. Same corner, same slow movements. Routine I was learning was a kind of promise. That night, I began to notice differences. One cub always slept on the outside of the group, back turned, as if guarding something no one else could see. Another had a habit of waking suddenly, sitting upright, then settling again, once it realized where it was. There was one, smaller Tage, and the rest, who never fully slept, until the others did first. I didn't give them names, not out loud, but in my mind, they earned them anyway. The night stretched long. Clouds rolled over the stars, thick and heavy. The air felt charged, like rain was thinking about falling. The cubs shifted more than usual, unsettled, by something I couldn't see. At some point, the smallest one wandered closer, not all the way, just enough to sit a short distance from me. It curled its tail around its body, watching it as breathing was quick, uneven. I stayed still, eyes fixed on the ceiling, pretending I hadn't noticed. Trust doesn't like to be watched. Minutes passed. Then the cub laid down. It wasn't touching me, but the space between us had closed completely. I could feel the warmth of its body through the air, could hear its breathing. Slow. That was when I realized something else. They weren't just learning me. I was learning them. Their fears, yes, but also their patience, their quiet bravery, the way they stayed awake, not because they were afraid, but because they were making sure the night stayed safe. Near morning, the clouds finally broke. Rain began softly, tapping against the roof in uneven rhythms. The sound seemed to calm them. One by one, the cubs fell into deeper sleep. All of them, even the ones who stayed awake. As the rain carried the night away, I felt the weight of exhaustion settle in, heavy but peaceful, and beneath it, something remember, belonging. I had stopped counting the nights, but somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet thought formed. If this was only the third I wasn't sure how I would ever leave them. When the 20th came, the storm arrived. Before nightfall, the 6th day passed. Too quietly. No storms. No sudden sounds. Just sun, heat, and the slow movement of shadows across the field. The kind of day that feels harmless. Almost forget. Table. But something was different. I noticed it before night fell. One cub didn't eat much. Another stayed apart longer than usual, sitting near the wall, tail wrapped tight around its body. Their movements felt slower, more careful. The air inside the shelter was warm and still. Even the insects outside sounded distant, muted, as if the field itself had gone quiet. That night, the cubs didn't settle right away. They shifted, stood up, changed places, a low restlessness moved through them like a shared thought. I lay down as usual, breathing slowly, waiting for the night to find its shape. It took longer, much longer. At some point, one of the cubs let out a soft, strained sound. Not fear, or not pain. Something else. Something fragile. I sat up. The cub near the wall was trembling. Small, shallow breaths. Eyes half-lidded, unfocused. The others watched, unsure. Presa, D together, but not moving closer. I stayed where I was. I didn't touch it. I didn't rush. I just lowered myself to the floor nearby and made myself present. My breathing slow, my voice low, though I barely used it. Minutes passed. The cub's breathing eased. The trembling slowed. It leaned, just as lightly, toward the warmth of the group. Crisis passed, but the feeling stayed. That night, sleep was light, broken. I woke at every shift, every sound, every pause in breathing. That lasted too long. Fear had found a new shape. Not loud, not sudden, quiet. It wasn't about the storm anymore. It was about the fact that they were small, that they could change overnight, that I couldn't protect them from everything. Near morning, as the sky paled, a thought settled, heavy in my chest. I was getting attached to something I couldn't keep. The cubs slept eventually, tangled together, peaceful once more. Their bodies rose and fell. In steady rhythm, I stayed awake, watching, listening, counting breaths. Because loving something fragile, I was learning, meant accepting, how easily it could LD be taken away. I start counting a guy, and not the nights, the mornings. The light felt different now, shorter, paler, as if the field knew something I didn't want to admit. The cubs felt it too. Their energy came in waves. Instead of bursts, they rest, more, watch longer. They were growing. Not much, just enough to notice. Their bodies filled out slightly, movement steadier, less frantic. The smallest one wasn't the smallest anymore. The one who slept on the edge. Had started turning inward. Change was happening quietly. That night, I arrived later than usual. The sky had already turned deep blue, the first stars blinking weakly, behind thin clouds. When I stepped in, the cubs looked up at once. Then something unexpected happened. They moved toward me, not all at once, not urgently, just naturally, like it was the obvious thing to do. A few brushed past my legs. One sat near my feet, and D stayed there, watching me unpack. My chest tightened. I lay down, slower than usual, careful with the moment. The cubs settled around me, without hesitation. One chose my side. Another pressed against my knee. The group breathed as one. Fommy, liar, warm. Sleep came quickly. For them. For me, it didn't. I stared into the darkness, listening to the shelter's quiet sounds, thinking about how the end rarely announces itself, how it arrives, disguised as routine. Sometime in the night, I walk, to find, my hand uncovered. The air was cool. I felt a warmth there, steady, intentional. One of the cubs was resting its head against my palm, not moving, not testing, just staying. I didn't close my finger. I didn't pull away. I let my hand be what it was, a place to rest. Emotion rose fast, sharp, catching me off guard. I swallowed it back, staring at the ceiling. Untie, Elliot passed, because if I let myself feel all of it now, I wasn't sure I could keep doing this. Morning came, too soon. As the cub stirred and stretched, I knew, without anyone saying it, that time was shortening. That soon, these nights would belong to memory instead of routine. I sat up slowly, careful not to disturb them, and for the first time since the inning, the thought of leaving hurt more than the thought of staying. The field felt larger that night, not because it had changed, but because I had. The horizon stretched farther, the sky deeper, heavier with stars. That didn't seem to offer comfort anymore. Even the wind moved carefully, as if trying not to interrupt. Something fragile. Inside the shelter, the cubs were calm, in a way that felt deliberate. They didn't pace, didn't fidget. They gathered near me, before I even lay down. Their movements unhurried, practiced, familiar. The bulb cast soft shadows, and for the first time, I realized how much they had grown, not just in size, but in confidence. They trusted this place. They trusted me. That thought hurt. I lay down on my back, hands resting at my sides. The cubs settled quickly, warmth spreading around me, in quiet circles. One rested near my shoulder, another curled at my feet. Their breathing filled the shelter, like a single, steady sound. The night passed slowly. No storms, no fog, just stillness. I watched the ceiling, darken and lighten, as clouds drifted past the moon. Thought about all the nights that had led here, about how something temporary had become essential, without asking permission. Sometime before dawn, I woke, not from sound, but from awareness. A shift, a pause, the kind of silence that means attention. I felt it then. A cub had moved closer, close enough that I could feel Elliot's breath against my wrist. Its body was tense, alert, not afraid, but focused, like it was thinking. I stayed still. Seconds stretched, maybe minutes. The cub adjusted its position, lifting itself, just enough to balance. I could feel the soft brush of fur against my skin. A hesitation, then stillness and whatever it was about to do, it hadn't done it yet, and somehow I knew the night was holding its breath. I was fully awake when it happened. The shelter was silent, in a way I had never heard before. No wind, no insects, even the old wood seemed to hold still. The air felt thick, expectant, as if the night itself was watching. The cub was still there. I could feel its essence before I fell. Its movement, a warmth hovering near my wrist, a pause that lasted just long enough to matter. Then, slowly, carefully, it lifted its paw. The touch was barely there at first, just the softest pressure. Uncertain, testing. The pads were warm, real, trembling, just slightly. It rested its paw on my hand, not gripping, not pulling, just placing it there. Something in my chest broke open. The simplicity of it, the trust, the choice. This small being, who had known fear, loss, and nights too quiet to feel safe, had decided that my hand was where it belonged. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I let tears gather silently, careful not to shake. The moment loose, my fingers stayed open, still, offering nothing but presence. The cub sighed, a tiny sound, content. It stayed like that for a long time, long enough for memories I hadn't thought about in years to rise and pass, long enough for the ache of knowing this would end, to soften into gratitude. When the paw Nally lifted away, it did so gently, almost apologetically. The cub settled back into the group, breathing deep, peaceful. The shelter remained quiet, but I was changed, because in that moment, I understood something I hadn't before. Connection doesn't need words. Healing doesn't need time. Samity, MES, it only needs trust, placed carefully, like a paw in an open hand. I stayed awake until morning, holding the memory so tightly I was afraid To let it fade, the last morning arrived, without ceremony. No shift in the wind, no sudden light, just a slow return of color. To the field, the sky pale, open, as if nothing important had happened at all. The kind of morning that pretend not to know what it's taking from you. The cubs woke. One by one, they stretched, yawned, bumped into each other. In small, familiar ways, the world was the same for them, and that was the point. They were ready, stronger now, steadier, no longer watching the night for danger. I sat up quietly. One cub glanced at me, then went back to grooming its tail. Another brushed past my leg, unbothered. There was no fear in them anymore, no urgency, and somehow that hurt more than if there had been. And I packed my bag slowly. Every sound felt loud. In the small shelter, the zipper, the fabric folding, the soft thud of my boots in my hands. The cubs watched, but they didn't follow. They didn't need to. Before I stood, I looked at them, one last time, at the group that had taught me how trust grows in the dark, how presence can be enough, how healing doesn't always announce itself. The cub from the night before met my eyes, just for a second, then it turned away, curling back into the warmth of the others. No goodbye. I stepped outside. The field was bright now, washed clean, endless, quiet. The grass moved gently in the morning breeze. Somewhere, a bird called, life continuing, unconcerned with endings. I didn't look back because I didn't need to. That small weight, the warmth of a paw, resting in my hand, had already gone with me, and I knew it always would.